Hello, it's Phillip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London. This morning I'm looking at a book which has come to us from the Law Society, that's Law Society Publishing. The book is called Litigation Funding Handbook and it's been written by Rocco Pirozzolo. I hope I pronounced the name correctly. Probably not, but there we are. This is part of the Legal Handbook series of titles from the Law Society. It's excellent. A first-class book and very interesting because of the changes that are taking place at the moment. We're in a period of change. I'm recording this as we have the end of the general election campaign, spring of 2015. So we've got a lot of interesting things to happen in the future. Now, Elizabeth and I talked about this book and we came up with a title for our review, A Comprehensive Guide to the Extensive Changes to Costs and Funding. And that's really where we are today in the spring of 2015. Here's the front page, the front part of the book. There's the spine and then there's the back, which tells you quite a lot about it. It's not a heavy book, it's a paperback. It's an index, it runs to 300 odd pages. There's the index at the back there. And then you've got the actual content. There are quite a lot of appendices, code of conduct for litigation funders, that's an area that is developing, CFAs, agreements, precedent H and guidance there, you know that if you're involved in costs. Then again Appendix C running all the way through, and in fact it's tabulated there, you can see how that's done. Appendix B is on CPR and the relevant rules plus the practice directions, and then Appendix A, damage-based agreement regulations. That's come in quite a big way. You see the appendices actually run to, it starts off with the Courts and Legal Services Act, which is of course an important piece of legislation. About 100 pages of the book, in fact, let's see, over 100 pages in fact is on the appendices. If we then go to the front, you've got the main front piece there. You've got other books in the Legal Handbook series mentioned there by the Law Society, and these are very important books for practitioners without any question. There's a detail there about the content with the various chapter headings, and then you've, as I say, you've got 12 chapters, and then you've got the various appendices which are listed there. Then we get into the contributors, because Rocco is the general editor, and then there are a lot of people who've been involved in this. And I'm just going to show the names, I can't mention all of them. There we are. And then do have a look at the foreword by Vivian Ramsey. And the preface, again, is always worth reading, because, as I've indicated before, this was dated August 2014. There's been a lot of change. Table of cases, of course, we've got a few cases and statutory instruments, that sort of thing. Then we get into the actual text itself. It's nice use of abbreviations there too. Again, it's always, sometimes you may have a little mental block about what the abbreviation might mean, so it's important. Chapter 1, an overview of Jackson and the reforms. Then you've got bit of paragraph numbering there. There isn't perhaps a very small amount of footnoting. You can see very little, but you do again have subheadings and paragraph numbering to find things pretty easily. It's a good book. I'm very impressed with it. I think anybody who's involved, as I am, in the area of litigation funding and understanding what is happening at the moment as we enter probably a new era for the way in which we do our business. Huge increase in court fees, for instance, which is deterring people from taking cases to court. A big increase in mediation. Obviously going to be a different legal landscape, and this is where this book comes in now to set where we are reasonably straight, and then we see where we go from there. This is what we say about the book. This handbook has been described as essential reading for all involved in civil litigation, and essential it certainly is. Litigation funding can be complex enough, but as of late it has gone through considerable change, a radical overhaul in fact in the wake of the Jackson reforms, which go back to April 2013. Heading a team of expert contributors, the author Rocco Pirozzolo has produced the Law Society Handbook that provides authoritative, detailed yet succinct coverage of the extensive changes to costs and funding that are now in place. And as the author reminds us, the availability of public funding in the form of legal aid for civil litigation has severely diminished, and he adds that it falls to private funding arrangements in its various guises. That's called litigation funding, to enable civil litigants to bring their cases. And he's careful to point out that litigation funding in the various forms covered in this handbook is not merely the province of big corporations or corporates embarking on big commercial disputes. It's intended, he says, to be read by all civil litigators and litigants. And obviously it does come in part from what's been going on in the United States of America. But this business of litigation funding and who is going to assist is going to I think this is going to become much more to the fore in the next 5 years of the Parliament. So I think therefore this book is just coming out at the right time. Following an overview of the Jackson reforms and a discussion on such issues of proportionality, fixed costs and costs management, the handbook focuses on the forms of litigation funding that are now commonly used. That includes CFAs, after the event and before the event insurance, DBAs, and there's a special bit on that, and that's damage-based agreements, and of course much more. I'm aware that people will have their own views about CFAs and DBAs and so forth, but at least we've got something here which sets out where we are at the present time, whether you are in favour or not in favour of this type of approach. The fact is we have to live in the real world, so you've got to know what is available. The important final chapter, Litigation Funding and the SRA Handbook, deals with the regulatory framework, including consumer protection, complaints, and, take note, the consequences of failing to provide appropriate advice about costs and funding. This is ideally a book for practitioners wishing to brush up, says the author, or refresh their memories on the reforms. As a handbook rather than a textbook on costs, it nonetheless provides the necessary tables of cases, statutes and statutory instruments. Not too much, but there's enough there to help. The 6 appendices which I showed you include extracts from the relevant legislation and the CPR, as well as the Code of Conduct for litigation funders. Again, that area I think is very important both for members of the bar and for solicitors. In a convenient paperback format, what this handbook does is it distinguishes itself with its practical plain English approach, and is therefore an indispensable companion for the practitioner in our view, tasked with providing accurate, up-to-date advice to clients in what is a difficult, changing world, and one where we don't really know where we're actually going at the moment with some of this. So at least it gives some options for the potential litigant as to what to do in the future. And the publication date is cited at 2014. As I say, it's an interesting book. A nice front cover there, and that's the side, and then there's the back bit setting out what it is with a bit of information with contributions from the various people. Let's just open it in the middle. Qualified one-way cost shifting, that's an important area again at the moment. Key features, you get paragraph numbering, key features, and introduction, and so on. Again, conditional fee agreements. Of course, the Law Society have produced their own book on CFAs. This one has been written by David Marshall. Again, you have an introduction, the history of it, and so forth. And for people who are not particularly au fait with this sort of area, again, I think it's not a difficult book to read, and it's one that I think any practitioner should certainly be aware of and should sort of zip through quite quickly, because it will give you an idea of where we are at the moment on the whole issue of litigation funding. And as I say, we've got probably 5 years worth of changes coming about with the new Parliament in May 2015, and we'll see what happens then. Thank you to the editor and the contributors, and of course to Law Society Publishing, for giving us another excellent practitioner and professional book, which is of great assistance to us with what we do. Thank you. Bye-bye.